Chuck Ohlone. I'm a reenactor. And for 36 years in the classroom, I used reenactment to bring history to life for my students. And I would wear the garb, and I'd bring stuff in that they could handle. I would play the music in the background for the time period, so I had a soundtrack to history going. And I tried to immerse my students in the subject. Well, I'm not in the classroom anymore, and I'm repurposing myself because I have an entire room at the house filled with garb, and I have a passion still for bringing the past alive and the desire to preserve landmarks, and I like to play history detective. So what I'm doing is I'm involved in a very pretentious sounding mission Odyssey, where I will visit each of the sites for Alta California that had to do with the mission era and a bit past that. Anything that will fit into this framework. So the missions, the Asistencias, those are spin-off missions. Estancias, those are ranchos. Presidios, those are fortifications designed to protect the missions. And anything else that happens to catch my fancy. Well, I've left Mission Santa Cruz, and I'm now headed towards Mission Santa Clara, which had a pretty rough time of it. I think there were like 6 different versions of it built. So I'm going to go there, tell the story in garb, and record it and leave a visual record here. And I hope you stick with me as I continue my journey. So this is Mission Santa Clara, the 8th mission in the chain of California missions, and the very first named for a woman. And this particular building is the 5th version of the mission, and also the 6th, and I'll get into that. The story of Mission Santa Clara, though, begins a bit further back with the expedition of Governor Portola, who was in search of Monterey Bay. In 1769, he marched forth from Mission San Diego, or perhaps the Presidio of San Diego, with 63 soldados de cuerda, leather jacket soldiers, and 100 mules. He's got Padre Crespi as the diarist, who's recording everything he's seeing. And they're in search of Monterey Bay, and they're basing this off of descriptions that Sebastian Vizcaíno's pilot wrote down in 1602. Well, the descriptions and what they're seeing don't match up, and so Portola ends up leaving the Monterey area, and he goes north and he starts exploring the San Francisco Peninsula. And at times he sent off one of his sergeants, Jose Ortega, to explore and not take the whole party along for the journey, to explore certain regions. And Portola discovers San Francisco Bay, and he sends Ortega around to, find out just how big this is. And Ortega will pass through the Santa Clara Valley, and he'll come back and say, it's really big. And Portola will state, okay, we've gone far enough. Our orders were to find Monterey Bay. That's it. We're done. And he heads back. Well, then, of course, the next year he's sent north again. But now, Pedro Fages, the next governor, he's going to mount an expedition, or actually a couple of them, and he's going to take Father Crespi along, and they're going to go through the area, and they'll also pass through the Santa Clara region. and they're looking for potential sites. I'm sure Fages was looking for sites for a presidio because they're going to want to try to control the bay, the Spanish do. And Father Crespi, I'm sure he's looking for mission sites. To make the picture a little more complete, you have to understand that Spain was in competition with Russia and with Britain for control of Alta California. And in 1773, Viceroy Bucaleri said that this was a priority and that 2 missions needed to be established. The next year, Governor Fernando de Rivera, and accompanied by Padre Francisco Paulo, also come through the Santa Clara area, and they're looking for a place with good water, fertile soil, lots of Native Californians in the area, and firewood, and they're looking at all these different things, get a checklist going. And I think it was Padre Paulo who ends up referring to the area as Llano de los Robles, or I think plain or level of the oaks. And it isn't going to be until 1776 when things really get decided. Juan Bautista de Anza, after bringing a bunch of colonists or settlers north to Monterey, he drops them off, and he takes a dozen soldados with him, and he takes Padre Pedro Font with him, and Padre Font is going to be the diarist, and he's going to write everything down. And the small expedition is going to at first follow the route that Governor Fages had established. And as they went up north, say March 28th, de Anza found the site or future site for El Presidio Real de San Francisco, and that was one of the goals, was find a place to establish a presidio, and the future site for Mission San Francisco de Asís, or Mission Dolores. And he too is going to drop down towards the Santa Clara Valley. Meanwhile, in September of that year, El Presidio Real de San Francisco is fortified, and in October of that year, Mission San Francisco de Asís, or Mission Dolores, is established. But here we have de Anza exploring along with Padre Font, and they come into the Santa Clara Valley, and Padre Font, interestingly enough, also uses the same expression to describe it, Llano de los Robles. And it's decided that a mission ought to be established on the banks of the river that they called Nuestra Señora de la Guadalupe. There were some delays in establishing Mission Santa Clara, the mission that the Spanish wanted to control the southern part of San Francisco Bay. There was a Chumash rebellion that was taking place around Mission San Luis Obispo, so that sort of delayed things. But on January 12th, 1777, at the Ohlone village site of Socoysuca, Padre Saravia said the first Mass, establishing Mission Santa Clara de Asís. A few days after the founding, Padre Murguia, who was one of the founding missionaries here, arrived from Monterey with supplies, including many religious artifacts which had been donated by churches in Mexico as early as 1768. And they were kind of off to a running start here. By the end of the year, there was a log chapel built. and housing was being worked on, and a number of other log buildings were being created. Those Native Americans who joined Mission Santa Clara, many of them were referred to by the Spanish as costeños, meaning people of the coast, and that word later got changed to Costanoan. Later the Spanish were referring to them as Ohlone, and the ones who at first joined Mission Santa Clara were from the tribe they called the Thamien, and later they would be joined by Miwok and Yokuts at the mission, becoming their neophytes. The Ohlone lived in tiny settlements called by the Spanish rancherias and survived by hunting and gathering, their staple food being the acorn, of which great quantities were gathered in the fall when they were most abundant. Ones that were not used immediately could be stored underground. Once toxins were removed, they were ground by the women in stone mortars and made into porridge or cakes. They varied their diet with fish and shellfish, with seeds and roots, and with venison, rabbit and quail, and smoked and consumed wild tobacco. In May of 1777, an epidemic struck. Many of the Ohlone children were dying. Because of this, the Padres were able to begin baptizing children. On June 6th, a 6-month-old native baby became the first baby baptized by the priests at the mission. The Padres gave her the Spanish name of Clara as a tribute to the Santa Clara Mission. Her native name has been lost to history, as the fathers never recorded it. The next day, a 1-year-old Native American boy from a nearby village was brought by his parents to the mission. He was given the Hispanic name of Jose Maria. Other Ohlone allowed Padre de la Peña to perform baptisms on 18 other ill children, showing signs of an improving relationship between the Padres and the Ohlone. I talk too much. Guess I'm coming back. Oops. Hope you stick with me.